Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna show you how to cut edge cut keys, edge cut car keys specifically. So we already went over this machine. This machine allows you to cut regular house keys, edge cut keys, double-sided edge cut keys, and also car keys. You remember here the two jaws have different settings. So if you want to move the setting so that you can, the key fits better, then you basically loosen this up. You press this down and you can turn this around. The reason why you use this is because sometimes the keys have different grooves on it, so it's easier to hold if you have if you're on like the B jaw or the C jaw. So you just have to make sure that on the left corner, this is the same on both sides. So if you have A here, you better have A here, or it's gonna hold it incorrectly. And it's also gonna mess up the cut as well. So just to recap, this is the lever that moves the carriage on this machine. There's a button down here that releases the carriage so you can start cutting the key. This is your shoulder stop. You use it for pretty much more of like regular keys. With car keys, you primarily use the tip stops that it comes with. This is the wheel cutter. We have the deburring rotary brush over here. We have our power up here. It's usually just always on. You do have a light if you need it. And this is the tracer. I think for the most part, that's the different parts of this machine. Now to cut edge cut keys, it's relatively simple. You want to make sure you are prepared and you have your protective goggles. Super important when you're cutting the key. First things first, you are going to get the customer's key. So edge cut keys could be the ones without chips. This one has a chip in it, but we're cutting it without a chip on it. We just want the blade portion. I'm just showing you right now how to cut edge cut keys. Edge cut keys are in also proximity keys as like an emergency key. And even flip keys. So this is like the first thing you sort of need to learn when you are duplicating keys. So it's really you're duplicating and then you go into like the programming side, but most keys you're going to be cutting. Okay. So first things first, car keys. Our jaws are set A and A. I'm pretty sure it's going to be fine. But the jaws underneath right here where the teeth should be, this one's pretty flat. So, you know, it works well with this one. Now for this, let me see. Let me go into, I don't know if this is autofocus. Let's see. Okay, cool. Oh man, terrible. Let's see. I'm gonna try to bring it out of autofocus mode and I'm gonna put it into manual. Okay. Okay, you'll notice right here, what we're gonna be using to grip the key is this portion right here. So there's a line right there, but this part, this tiny little bit of meat, we're gonna be gripping it with the jaw, okay? Same thing on this side. That's why it's super important you have the right key, but we're gonna be gripping it on this jaw, and that's what's gonna level it out so that we're cutting it properly, okay? So to get started, let's get it back into focus. Okay, so we are going to take the key that we're cutting. This is the customer's key. We're taking our tip stop and we're gonna put it at the far end to the right. You can use it this way or this way, it doesn't matter. I have my tip stop in place. This tip stop allows the key to stop at the same distance as this one so that everything is perfect. As far as how far it goes in, because we're just gripping it by this meat and there's a, this protrudes out, it stops it from going too far in, and that's exactly where we want the key. So I'm gonna put this in. There we go. I am putting pressure down with my finger and pushing it this way so it's right against that tip stop. And now I tighten. Don't over tighten. This jaw is super strong. It will smash the key and mess up the customer's key. So don't over tighten. Okay. This is perfectly in place. Now I am going to take the key that we're cutting and do the same exact thing. Tip stop in, far edge. This is in as well. Don't over tighten, putting pressure down, putting pressure this way so that I can get it right and perfect. Okay, tip stop is done. Let's move that out of the way. Now, that was probably the hardest part, is setting it up. Now, if keys are worn down, it's a different story. It's a little bit more complicated, but let's say we have a perfectly cut key, we're just duplicating it. It's straightforward. That's it. You put it in, it's both at the same distance this way, and it's also perfectly parallel to the jaw and the key here. So it's set up. All we do is now we release the carriage and we start cutting the key. This is semi-automatic. You do want to control semi-automatic, meaning that you don't have to really hold this too much. There's enough tension. There's a spring that pulls this carriage towards this way, which allows enough tension for this to be able to cut the key. But I like controlling this just because if you don't have that much grip on this side, because there's only a little bit of meat, you don't want too much pressure pushing this key or it'll make it move. How I like to cut edge cut keys is cutting it layer by layer. So if, let's say this is the blade of the key, I'm gonna cut layer by layer by layer instead of just cutting all of it at one fell swoop. It makes it a smoother cut. It doesn't make a crazy sound, and it's just easier to do. And so I'll show you how to cut this side. Once we cut this side, we're gonna flip it over 180 and then we cut the other side. Edge cut keys on cars are pretty much the same on both sides. As a word of caution though, if let's say, keys get worn down, one side might be more worn than the other side. So for safety of making sure the key works, you do want to flip them both over. You don't necessarily have to. I would say 95% of the times you can just use one side to cut and it'll be fine. But there will be like 5% of the time where it's worn on one side, and if you cut the same cut on this side and the other side, it might not work. So I'll go ahead and I'll show you how to cut it now. All you do, release the carriage, layer by layer, back and forth, and that's it. That is how you cut one side of the edge cut key. All you do is you do the same thing. You flip this side over, tip stop, in, cut it, and then you deburr the key over here by pressing this button. You just press this button, you have to hold it, and then you deburr. And that's it. That's how you cut it. Okay, we got cut off a little prematurely. We had a customer coming in. I just want to show the cut on the other side and then deburr, and then you test the key. So the key that the customer brought is still there. So we already cut one side. We're now going to do the same thing on the other side. Like I said, to be safe, you want to flip this one as well, because we already cut the other side with this side. So we want to flip this. Make sure it's putting pressure down and forward to make sure this is leveled. If it's slightly off, if it's like this, I'm exaggerating, but if it's even a tiny bit off, it can mess up the cut on the key. So it has to be flat. So I'm making sure this key is parallel to this jaw. Once I do that, this is the side that we cut already. So I'm putting that down. Be careful, always make sure the key blank is on the right side, not the left side. You never want to mess with the customer's key. If you accidentally flip it, there's a chance that this key could be cut. There is a safety guard though, because this, if the key is the exact same type of key, the tracer on a blank key won't allow the wheel to cut the original key, even if you switched it. But there is a chance that you can mess it up, so never do that. So once the keys are set in place, cutting level by level, and we're gonna deburr afterwards. See, I'm going back and forth until no more cutting sound. That's it. So the key is now cut on both sides. Now we're gonna deburr both sides. How I do that is I hold the button here. I angle it. So I angle a bit so I can just get the deburr side. I don't want to scuff up the entire key. I just want to get the little metal filings out. Once I do that, just cleaning it up. Okay, that's it. Key is done. We duplicated the key. Really simple. The keys that tend to be challenging are the ones that don't have very much meat here. So there's nothing for this thing to grip onto. And so sometimes what you have to do is you actually can't even use this line, and you have to visually eyeball this and put it in so that it has something to grip onto. You have to do the same thing on this side as well. So what I mean by this is, let's say if there's not enough meat to grip here, you literally have to open up this jaw and put this key all the way in and make sure that it's parallel. Can't be like this or like that. You have to eyeball it because there are cuts here. You can't just push it down and it's leveled. You literally have to eyeball it and make sure that it is leveled. And so I look at this area right here to make sure that it's parallel. You also, of course, need the tip stop, and you have to do the same thing on the other side as well if there's not enough meat to grip onto. So yeah, then afterwards what you do is you go to the customer's car, you stick the key in, the duplicated key into the ignition, into the doorway, and you just put it in a couple of times just to make sure it hits all the pins and it cleans up the key. And then it should smooth out, and you just test it to see how easy it is to use the key. Always use the customer's key first so that you have a baseline of how it should feel. So, you know, if you put in the customer's key, sometimes it doesn't even turn and then their lock is messed up. So at least you know that it wasn't you that messed it up or that the key's not messed up. It's just originally how that is. Customers won't tell you that sometimes, so you have to always test. After I test it on the door, it feels good. I go inside and I test it on the ignition. Use the customer's key first to turn it, to make sure it works, and then test it with yours. If it has a chip, obviously it's not going to start until you program it, but what you're testing is how well you cut the edge cut key. And that is how you do an edge cut key.